How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great dialogue today. We're going to talk about 10 tips that will help you run a housing unit, especially if this is your first time entering that housing unit as a officer. I mean, that's the key. Right now, this video, I think senior officers could also get a few tips from this as well, but this is our focus. Our focus is going to be for those who are just entering that unit. And hopefully, between me and Russ, we provide 10 good tips for you to have on your first day. These are tips that we did not have on our first day. So hopefully our experience is able to add to your effectiveness. Now, granted, I just want to announce my sponsors before I bring Russ on. First, we have American Military University. If you guys get a chance, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. They're starting to get programs there for those in corrections that are looking to seek higher education so they can bring some experience, maybe back into the classroom. I mean, guys, that's the evolution of education right now. They are trying to bring people with experience to speak to the students. I usually come in a lot as well, so it's good to affect those young minds early and let them understand how the real world works, especially in our profession, because if we're not speaking it, somebody else is. And usually those people that speak about this profession don't actually have the experience. So having said that, guys, if you're looking to get that degree, please check out American Military University. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That book is available, doing well, sells tons of copies. The link to that is in the description. It's available on Amazon. I'm very proud of that book. And thank you for everyone who's been supporting that book thus far. And I also have my latest book is coming out. It's coming out from Blue 360 Media. The link to this is in the description. It's available for pre-order. That's the book right now. It comes out August 31st. When you pre-order it, you get an app, you get an ebook, and you also get the soft cover book. It's available August 31st, but you can pre-order it now. Link to that is in the description. And I just want to show you a quick little video about the book. So bear with me. There I am. Okay, hold on. All right, guys, I printed out the final manuscript for How to Succeed in Corrections. Lessons learned while working in a prison. It's pretty thick. Now, mind you, this is not double-sided. So when you get the book, it will be around 644 pages. It's available through Blue 360 Media. It's available for pre-order right now as we speak. It will come with an app, an ebook, and the actual soft cover book. And just to give you a taste of what this book offers, it's got tons of advice, but it also has a chance for you to make an impact. I'll give you an example. You could see here, let's say chapter 27, it talks about workplace gossip destroys morale. You'll see right below that a quote. Now, that quote comes from a professional in the field. In this case, it's coming from Greg Stevens. He's a correctional officer out of Connecticut Department of Corrections. Then you see my passage that supports it. The key thought behind that passage, which is highlighted in gray, and then you can add your notes, and then you can add what value or advice can you add to this? And that is done for each passage. And this is how we create our legacy. So in the end, after we read it, after we provide our input, our value, we pass it off to those that we feel have the greatest potential. Get your book now. There you go. Now let me get Russ. What's up, Russ?
Anthony, how's it going, sir?
Good. We're going to be talking about inmate housing units today. But before we do that, you mind introducing yourself, please?
No, love to introduce myself. My name is Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections. Started at San Quentin way back in the day in the 80s. Later on, after I retired, I became a senior juvenile correctional officer. And now I work for a company that does reentry and rehabilitation work at a local probation department and a local county jail where I function as a case manager.
And Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos going?
Keepers is doing great. We keep getting more and more people in there. I think something is wrong with my counter, though. I should have hit 6,000 long ago. But I can't figure out what the deal is with that. But we have thousands and thousands of people who are coming there every day to, engage in a professional manner to increase their professionalism on the job, increase their knowledge, increase their safety, increase their knowledge of history as well.
And guys, what's great about Keepers of Chaos on Facebook, also what we provide here on Tier Talk, is that we have people with experience that have lived through it that are able to go back and help people go through what's new. And these are things that we did not have going in. So we're pretty certain that these are things that will help because these are the things that we needed. So same thing with the dialogue we're going to have today. There's a gap. And what we're doing today is fill the gap. And today is about tips for running an inmate housing unit. We have 10 tips. I believe these tips, for many, they could seem to be common sense, but as we explain it, I think the meat of it all comes from the explanation within the context of the dialogue that we're having. So the first tip right off the bat is working a housing unit provides you a good opportunity to know who your inmates are, know what they're capable of, and it also deals with the inmate dynamic and also our observation. I mean, that's the key. That's how we are able to basically understand this dynamic. When you're working an inmate housing unit, it's not like anything you've ever done before. It's not I can't think of a comparable experience because there's so many things happening at once, and your ability to observe, not myopic, by the way. I'm talking about everything from what's on the side to what's in front of you is paramount to your survival in this profession right from the get-go. And I think there's a lot about observation that could be learned when running a housing unit. Wouldn't you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, this is one of those things is, I as a supervisor through the years, I had officers that would just let let the shift happen to them. And then, I had officers out there that they were, engaged and proactive, preemptive, preventative, and they happened to the shift and they made a real impact out there. So that's where you want to be with that is that, this is your function is to make sure that this thing functions well, but you're not just letting it skitter along on its own. This is not a hands-off thing. This is you being intentional and you being the person in charge that's running it.
Yeah, and guys, when we talk about knowing who your inmates are, we did a dialogue the other day where you have to realize something. No matter how friendly or nice they can be, inmates are capable, just like any other human, if the circumstance arises, to be predators. They're capable of manipulation. They're capable of playing the game that benefits them the most. So having said that, you have to be wary of your environment and also very wary of human behavior. I mean, me and Russ had a great dialogue before where we talked about, do you know who people really are? And even if you do know who they are, does that really tell you what they're capable of? And we don't think those two things are directly related. I mean, you could have the friendliest inmate in the world, but that doesn't tell you what they're capable of doing. So having said that, one of the things that when I ran a housing unit, one of the things that I was observing, and I love, putting it out there, is the dynamic. Who's running this unit? I mean, yes, we are. I get that, but who's running the unit from the inmate side? Who's that pod boss, if you will? I think that's very important for people to kind of understand who may run that unit outside of the officer that's in control. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Oh, 100%. Those are the things that you have to look at on a day-to-day basis and make sure that you understand what your function is, make sure that you can understand what other people's functions are, whether it's within your unit or just outside, because it's not just your unit that counts, but it's the whole enchilada. You're just a single little part of that one little bean.
Yeah, because it's funny because I remember someone telling me, like, you running the unit as an officer, that should be technically automatic. That's within that expected role, but you weren't chosen to run that unit. Where there are inmates there that are technically chosen to run that unit, that do have influence. And how do you work with that influence. I mean, right off the bat, I always let the inmate know who I find who believes they have some charge in that unit. I let them know that they're not running the unit, that I am. And I don't do it in an aggressive, disrespectful way, but sometimes those inmates that believe they have power over other inmates will try to come to you as, hey, Russ, listen, if you need help running this unit, just let me know. I have some influence here. If there's concerns, but I don't need your help. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not going to start this job with feeling obligated because all of a sudden you stepped in and you may feel that you have influence that I don't. I'll get my influence. Trust and believe. And if I don't have it right away, I'm not going to go to you. I'm going to go to my peers or my supervisors. So I believe that sometimes when you have those inmates that have some level of influence, they try to use that with staff to kind of barter, if that makes any sense. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast that we wrestle all the time, though, is, the amount of influence, or more specifically of undue influence, that inmates are exerting or trying to exert. And once you let them get the foot in the door, it becomes really, really hard to take all that back, because when you start taking it back, you will start noticing that the unit is no longer functioning flawlessly and seamlessly, whereas it appeared it was doing that before may not actually be the case.
Yeah, and I don't think that's hard to figure out who's running that unit, because always look to see where the inmates look. Like, for some reason, if you're giving out an order, you're giving out a directive, always kind of look at where those inmates are looking. Who are they looking towards? And usually that gives you a lot of detail in who somehow gives that permission, if you will. But I found it pretty easy to find out who runs the unit within the first few hours of me running a housing unit. It's not that hard. I mean, usually it could be two things. It could be someone in the back that kind of like is like a puppet master, or it could be someone that's like a social butterfly. It can come on either one of those extremes. You can have someone that's just in the back that, quietly runs things, or you could have someone who just is that social butterfly, getting involved in everybody's business, and then coming to you and trying to regulate you a little bit. So again, please take note of that, and don't allow that inmate to don't allow the inmate to believe that you need their influence. That's the key. You don't need their influence to run a unit. You are in control, because the moment you allow that to come in, it just says so much about your ability to run a unit. I mean, literally, it says that, one, you're weak because you don't trust in yourself, and we'll get to that with your authority. But the other is you don't trust your circle of support that you should have, the rightful circle that is your peers, your supervisors, whatnot. So again, I mean, that's a good tip. Working a housing unit provides you a good opportunity to know who your inmates are, know what they're capable of, the inmate dynamic. And one last thing, me and Russ discussed this in the last episode. What makes us a little different than a lot of police on the streets is that we operate directly in the projects, if you will. Like when we're in a building, we see this dynamic where most of the time, if you're on the streets and you're running into a project, everybody kind of runs away and hides. We work within that closet where everything is happening all at once. They have nowhere to hide. And our job is to be vigilant and watch every interaction that's happening as best we could. So having said that, this is a great way to truly understand how inmates maneuver. So when you get a chance to work in a housing unit, watch how they all maneuver, watch how they all connect, and we'll get into some tips later on about playing our role in involving ourselves in their business to some level. But again, I think this is a great tip, and it's not an easy tip, because again, this literally is observation, but based on what experience do you have? This is how you gain your experience. It's like Russ said, this isn't passive, this is intentional. But the more you I'll get Russ.
I was going to say that you can like mark this down as pro tip right here. If you have a nice little piece of information that would matter to the inmates, but it doesn't necessarily impact us in a negative way for them to know it, you can give them that little nugget of information and see where they take it to first, and You can do that over a period of, different days and times, to give a little piece of information to a different, ethnic group or different little STG out there and see where they run with it first. And that's a great way to find out who potentially the shot callers are and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that idea. And trust and believe, guys. Again, this is a tip I wish I had going in, but being observant. Sometimes, one last thing. Sometimes, because we are understaffed, the running of a housing unit can be very complex, but it could also be very tedious and very busy. Obviously, there's a lot of things that have to be done that could get in the way of you observing. But remember, guys, observation is a priority. So you need to find time to really sit back and watch that unit operate. You really do, because that's the key of running a housing unit. You're not just a body that's supposed to sit there. You're supposed to be actively involved, and we'll get into that. But I know you can get overwhelmed. I know it could become busy, but you got to find time in your day to sit back and watch the unit maneuver, watch the unit move. Okay, so that's the first one. Would you agree with that, Rusto, taking time during the day to make sure you're able to do this? Don't get so overwhelmed with the tedious task where
that's the point at which, you're truly, honing your skills at that point. You're out there and you're looking and you're observing things that you really don't know what they mean. You don't even know that you don't know what they mean. And, those skill sets, develop over time. And eventually you'll start being able to put the little puzzles together and understand, oh, this is the story that I'm seeing unfold before me. Where when you originally start out, what you're seeing is meaningless to you. But that's why you should question why inmates are doing the things that they're doing in the manner and the times in which they're doing them out there. And if you can start to put those together and understand what the framework of your puzzle looks like, you'll put yourself way ahead. But that's the way you have to look at it. Why is this particular inmate doing what he's doing at this moment? It's probably something innocuous, but that might lead to something that's less innocuous down the line. And so, just puzzle that out. Always ask yourself why. You can't always come out and just ask the inmates about it, but eventually you'll puzzle your way back to why they're doing the things that they're doing in the manner in which they're doing them.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt if you're a senior officer or if you're a supervisor, when you do your tours and you're with that rookie CO, to take that moment with that person, sit back and watch the unit together, and then answer some of the questions that they may have. Because again, experience is key. So being able to look at something and have experience, you're able to answer those whys, where if I don't, everything is a bit more ambiguous. So if I'm a supervisor, or maybe I'm a peer that's going to check on my rookie officers once in a while, like a field training officer, maybe I would say, hey, come to the office with me real quick. Let's watch the unit from a distance. Let me show you what I see just based on my experience. Kind of talk them through the knowledge that observation. What are you exactly looking for when you're observing? You're not just observing just to look. You're observing with a point. You're trying to get to something. You're trying to figure out how things maneuver. All right, Russ, I love this tip that you said. Don't cede your authority over to the inmates. What does that mean?
Like everything else we do inside of those housing units, it's all about, being the one in charge, being the one running things. And you'll see, and this is a common model for people to follow in their housing units out there, is they let the inmates run everything, and that's what the clerks are doing. That's what your maybe your MAC committee, men's advisory committee. That may not be a term that's out there, but there would be committees out there. And this guy, he's on the committee, and so he's talking to you and telling you the way things are and the way things are going to be. And it's easy in some units because sometimes they run pretty good and it's just hands off and they just kind of like do their own thing. And all you have to do is show up and press a few buttons, and it seems good. It seems like things are really smooth right up to the point that they're not. And then, something happens, some kind of drama. And next thing you know, we got, a couple hundred people, fighting inside the unit. And if you've ever had that happen, what a cast iron bitch that is to clean up. Don't be a hands-off type of person. Be in there and be, making sure that you're the one calling the actual shots and not even just, taking their advice. Oh, that's what I should do. You need to be in there and making sure that things are actually getting done and that you're plugged into the process in such a way that you really do have a feel for how your unit's operating and why it's doing the things that it does. I've seen I've seen some times where we had some real good looking piece out there on the yard. And I knew at many times that it just wasn't so. And, people were just kind of like letting things slide. And the next thing you know, you're cuffing operations for 400 inmates. And so we don't want to let it get to that point. I would rather have lots of little incidents where you're ferreting people out, sending them to the hole, and, interdicting drugs and alcohol and things like that, than have the thing entirely blow up and you just have to go back in later and take over the yard all over again.
Yeah, and guys, everything we teach is a balance, because I also want to say don't overuse your authority either. Most of the time when you're running a housing unit, it really is a respectful interaction between you and the inmate. It's between what they expect of you and what you expect of them. It's a shared level of expectation.
Yeah, it's for the most part, if I were going to, break that down, is for the most part, what we do when we're running these things is we are being assertive, not aggressive. All right. And so when you're assertive, you're just telling them, hey, this is what we're going to do. And the inmate is, taking the orders. He may even be resistant, but it's definitely a situation where it's I win because I'm getting what I want. And the inmate wins because they're receiving the information and they know the expectations. And so they're going to go along to get along. That's very different from an aggressive type approach, which also does have its place. I'm not going to tell you that, oh, no, we should only be assertive or we should only be obsequious or anything like that. There is a time and place for every different manner of communication. Become master of them all.
Yeah, because as I said, if you overuse the aggressive side, obviously you wind up losing its impact. But having said that, there are times when it truly is needed. In the book I have that's coming out, I think Russ has the quote at the beginning of it all, but it's the ask, tell, make model. The respect comes within the asking and even within the tell. But at that point, I have the ability within my authority to make you do it as well. But I don't really need to express that each and every time. I have no problem asking an inmate to do something and do it. That's great. Now, granted, all because I ask them doesn't mean they have the option to do it or not. I'm asking out of courteous, or being courteous. Now, if they choose not to do it, then the next step is going to be, okay, now I'm telling you, and then if that doesn't happen, then depending on what my goal is, I can either make them or charge them for refusing the direct order. But most of the time there's an exchange of respect. But as I said, I had a supervisor once tell me that, the authority should be seen by how you carry yourself. So that's not something that you have to advertise everywhere you go. That's just something that should be seen. He goes, lead the unit by expectation. And then if need be, you can enforce the rules if they don't meet your expectations. But before you go to enforce the rules, work on those expectations, and that will work because, again, you run the unit. That's your job. That's what you're there for, and the inmates know that. The inmates are going to do whatever they can, manipulate the inmates, do whatever they can to circumvent your ability to run a unit. But don't think for one moment they don't think you run the unit. That's your job. You are the one that runs the unit. So having said that, I led by expectations, and then worst comes to worst, if I just can't get them to where I need to be, then it goes ahead where I push the authority and go ahead and now I connect that to the rules. Now you're not in compliance. Now I'm going to use my authority to do whatever I need to do to balance that out, whether it's to charge you or whether it's to force you to do something that needs to be done. Let's say I'm moving from one area to another. But regardless, on day one, your position of authority is going to quickly be checked by inmates, especially your ability to say no. So granted, don't let them believe that your authority comes from an external source. Like, I'm doing this because my supervisor wants me to do it. No, you have the authority. You have to make it known at all times that the authority that you carry comes from you. Do not let them go around that position of authority, because as Russ said before, if they do it once, especially at the get-go, it's going to make for a very tough career, because you'll be coming off too soft. You have to come off hard at first, because you got to establish that level of authority that you won't get stepped on. All right. I think that's a great tip, Russ, by the way, when you thought of it. I think that's a powerful tip. That kind of goes with what we've always talked about in the past before, Russ, where the officer coming in has to enforce the rules as best they can, to establish their ability to say no, to establish their ability to push for policy and procedure. And later on, when they develop experience, they can work with it discretion. But I think at the very beginning, leaning on that rule book does test their ability to carry out their authority in that position they have. This is important. Know where your inmates can be. And I mean, out count, in count, whatever. But Russ, how important is that when you're working in a unit to know where your inmates are?
It's not necessarily just about where they are too, but where they should be, where they shouldn't be, and what you're going to establish as, the rules for, how they're milling about within the unit. There's some units, that just, they become a constant problem where officers let them get away and do with things, running their way down a wing to go drop stuff off at different cells. And they're this little butterfly, and you have no idea then what they're doing. Did they go down there and drop off a soup, or did they go down there and drop off a shank? You don't know. The inmates should know what your expectations are, and they should not be violating those expectations. Once you let them start getting away with all of these little things, it becomes really tough to bring it back. And when they are not where they are supposed to be, if they are in part of the unit that they're not supposed to have access to, if they're in the wrong unit that they're not supposed to have access to, you are setting the stage for not just an incident, probably a major incident, because I've seen so many times where that becomes the root of something else that goes on. You think your inmates are all at peace, and instead they're actually setting up a hit, and you're just not ready for that. You're letting things go on as they have been, and because they know what the expectations are, they're able to leverage that in order to get over and breach security. Don't let them do that.
Yeah. Now, guys, for me, this is more of the operations of the unit. What I did was, when I came into a unit, I went to my senior officer and I asked them, hey, where could inmates possibly be for an out count? Okay, well, Gange, they could be at the gate, they could be at food service, they could be porters, whatever it is. I want to know exactly where those locations are. And then I want a number that I can reach the officer at each of those locations to kind of confirm my count. And we're going to get into the specifics of a count later on in regards to what to look for. But I want to talk about how important this is. You need to know where those locations are, because the last thing you want to do is go down a unit, see a missing bed, and then an inmate tells you, oh, by the way, they're at food service. Okay, fine, but I'm still going to go ahead and make my phone calls. Now, granted, for the senior officers on the other end, where they have the inmates in question, don't hang up on the rookie. If the rookie calls and says, hey, I'm just confirming my count, it looks like I have 5 here at food service, can you confirm? You'll get some senior officers that may say, well, you should know where your inmates are, and hang up. And that may not be the case. I'm trying to confirm. I told you I have 5. I just want to make sure that you have 5. And be honest with you, a bad count is a bad count, regardless of who took it. The whole facility is going to be affected. So if I'm an officer and I'm a rookie and I'm looking to confirm who I have, help me. Hey, I'm not just calling you saying I don't know. I'm calling you and telling you I got 5. These are the 5 I have. Can you confirm? Because I don't see the individuals here, and these are the locations I believe that they're at. But knowing where your inmates can be is extremely important, because this is where, God forbid, there's ever an escape or whatnot. This is where the accountability begins. I don't have that person, let's say at 11 o'clock count. Okay, well, where could that person be? Well, I thought that person was assigned to the kitchen. So now we start to know, okay, well, let's see if that person went to the kitchen, but it's good to know exactly where your inmates are, where they need to be, when they're expected back. Let's not forget that, when they're expected back, like the early morning food service workers, let's say, should, come back at a certain time. Maybe the senior officer will either call the units or announce it on the radio that all morning food service workers are coming back. And then we just kind of keep things within that level of expectation. Because again, when you have an inmate going from point A to point B, that's where we're the most vulnerable. Because now they're out of the unit and they're walking around, and then they got to get to their spot. So we need to have communication from point A to point B and all throughout that process. Which means that if I expected 5 and I only got 4, I'm calling back the unit officer. Hey, did you send out 5? Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to call the GAs, or I'm going to call where that point is of where they're traveling from point A to point B to say, hey, did you guys check to see if these inmates came through? Because I'm supposed to get 5. I only got 4. I have seen where, unfortunately, I asked for 5. Let's say on food service, I only get 4, and I accept the 4 without calling back the unit officer to ask them if they sent me out 5. I mean, because granted, you could have also an inmate that's got 2 appointments. They got to go to food service, but they also have an appointment with medical. So now what happens is you think they're at food service as a unit officer, and you find out that they're at medical. Now, when you go to do your count, you got 5. I got 5 off my count. I thought they were at food service. Food service only has 4. Well, where's my other one? Oh, he went to the hospital somewhere, either during the initial call out or during the shift. And that's another thing, guys. If the inmate goes to food service and they're called out to go to medical, non-emergent, or whatever the area is, called out to go somewhere else, an appointment with mental health, whatever, it's just non-emergent, please make sure the unit officer knows where that inmate is. That unit officer is the base. That unit officer must know where that inmate is at all times. If that inmate has ventured off, please, if you are the let's say the area where they work or their detail supervisor, call the unit officer immediately, say, hey, I'm either going to send this inmate back to you so you can give them a pass to go to the hospital or go to this appointment, or we had an emergency and they were sent there directly. But that unit officer needs to be in the know. So again, knowing where your inmates are is important, but communicating that amongst everyone is extremely, extremely important. The last thing you want is for the inmate to kind of maneuver through that vulnerability of leaving the unit and the arrival of their next, wherever they're supposed to go. We're extremely vulnerable at that point in the middle. All right, so I love this one that you came up with. Oh, wait, Russ, do you have anything you want to say on that, or we can move to the next one?
No, just understand that across the country, if you screw up your count and something does happen, that's how we end up on the nightly news. We see that all the time. Don't mess up your count. Don't take things for granted. And make sure that you're cohesive with everyone else that's doing the counts and out counts. And I would say too is if you're in that position to really come up with better ideas for the count and stuff, people just want to make it so informal, and they stretch the boundaries of just basically being more permissive with where inmates are and aren't. Don't fall into that trap either.
Yeah. Next one, Russ, you said always be in their business. What does that mean?
Okay, so this is one of the things that I really developed for myself and later for officers that worked for me, was that there's no time where I should be leaving inmates alone to their own devices. I'm always constantly questioning who they are, where they are, where they're going, why are they in this particular area of even the dorm or whatever, maybe not directly, accosting them that way, but making sure that they see that I am, on the ball. I'm not sitting back letting my shift happen to me. I'm out there happening to the shift. And I was always cognizant of the fact of, who the inmates are, or at least, what their alliances were to each, specific gang or little, the little ethnic boundaries that they draw with each other and things like that. And making sure, I'm up there, I'm seeing what's in their locker, every chance I can get. I'm, if it's a dorm setting, I'm in and out of the dorm, seeing what they're doing, with regards to, what they're watching on TV, and generally putting myself in a position to be able to interdict contraband, being able to identify or validate gang members, and also being in a position to stop violent actions in the early phase, in the incipient phase, if possible, rather than clean up a 400-man riot out there on the yard. And so, that's just, active policing. We talk about, if you talk about the old days of like New York City, stop and frisk, always out there, across the yard. Hey, come over here. Let me see your ID. Who are you? Where are you going? Maybe pat them down. We have a wide range of things that we can use like that can stop things before they get started. And it's always easier when you are that proactive.
Yeah, and be mindful, guys. Corrections, you got to interact. I mean, we call them forced interactions in some case because we may not be used to interacting with these types of individuals, which could be individuals that could be deceitful and devious, or always out to maneuver. But granted, that's our job. Our job is to interact with them. And I'm not saying like everything has to be probing. You could approach, like what Russ said, with a level of curiosity in regards to, what's really going on in my unit. And then if it gets to a point where there is something wrong, then probe all you need to. That's your job. But having said that, it does start with you going around asking questions and interacting with the inmates in a respectful way. But I like what Russ said. I think a lot of inmates believe that there are some staff that are afraid to interact, because I've seen staff that think they're running a unit effectively by standing at the podium all day. Yeah, okay, I get it. You're observing, but you're not gathering really any information. You got to observe, and then you got to follow through. And the second part of that follow through is walking around and interacting. But you also have to be mindful too that you don't get so distracted where during those interactions, you're not watching everything else that's happening. So again, there's just an amazing balance here of what I like to say, just enough. I think that should be a whole chapter of a book as it is you got to do just enough. That's the key, just enough. So just enough so they know you're interested in what's happening. That's key, but not enough to the point where you're going to be distracted by it either. Because again, they could be doing things like red herrings, setting you up, and then you spend all your energy focusing on this, and this whole thing over here is happening. So again, when you're walking around, there's a balance of how you're going to invest your energy, but just be very wary of investing all your energy into one thing. And trust me, if it's going to take all your energy, then I would go ahead and make a call to your supervisor or support staff to come up and assist you, because at the end of the day, when something requires all your energy, you may not be able to divide that amongst the rest of the running of the unit. So that's when you need help. It's like a search. For me, and we'll get to it, a search involves all your energy. So when I'm doing a search, I should have somebody watching the floor for me. But Russ, I like that, always be in their business. For me, I interacted with everyone. I had no problems asking them, why. That was the big thing, why, or more on the tactical side. What are you doing? I'm sorry. What are you trying to accomplish here? That's the key. Let them know that you're curious, because the more questions you ask, the more they may become hesitant in trying to do something foolish, because they never know at that point what you're looking at or what you're planning on doing. That's the key. I think you interacting puts the inmates on their toes, because think about it from the adverse. If they're trying to run the unit, let's say the manipulative inmates, they're going to want to know everything you're doing. So they're going to want to interact with you. So having said that, on the adverse of that, then interact with them. Let them know that, you're in control. I think, Russ, I think a good part about what you're saying too, Russ, is that if you are the person that's initiating these interactions and you're the one that's asking questions, it puts you in a level of control. It works with the level of authority that you have. So I think always being in their business also establishes a higher level of authority for you. So I love that tip. Hey, Russ, this is something on the tactical side that I thought was pretty cool for you to bring up. And you said always maintain vigilance of the ingress and egress areas of your unit. How important is that, Russ, especially for safety and security?
So, like everything else that we do, there are some officers that develop bad habits, or they inherit bad habits, from prior iterations of their shift, and inmates will take advantage of that, and they will get themselves into areas that they're not supposed to be. Even a different cell block than where they're supposed to be, and they'll come in there and they'll introduce contraband, or they'll come in there and they'll carry out an assault or a stabbing or any other thing. And so the choke points, right, are the easiest way to intercede in that. Make sure that you are challenging inmates that are entering your area and making sure that they belong there. I've had officers out there, tell me before, well, how would you not know? I said, well, you may work in a place where there's a much smaller number of inmates. Most of the units that I worked in, it was inmates by the hundreds or inmates by the thousands. And sometimes the churn rate was high, but we have to get out there and challenge the inmate. A lot of times we had to be out there with our list to check a list against, okay, this guy's going into this dorm. That's correct. There were times that we didn't always get that paperwork, and that they had stickers that were not good, but they would just, be placed on there as to what dorm they were supposed to go in. And these guys would steal or manufacture stickers to try and get into different places. And most of the time it was kind of innocuous, where, they were going in there to get a tattoo or something, but sometimes they were going in there to, to get a shot of heroin. Sometimes they were going in there to carry out an assault, or to take some weapons inside an area. And, I caught many, many people doing very, very many bad felonies just by being up on knowing where people were supposed to be and utilizing that choke point where they're either entering an area or exiting an area to catch them. And so it's better if we go out there and we're in the constant challenge mode, because that sends a signal to the rest of the inmates that you're on top of your game, and they're at least not going to game you while you're there in that shift. What the next shift does, you may not have as much control over that, but you want to be sure that you are on your game and that you're spot on, because that is always where bad things happens, are those choke points, those points of ingress and egress.
Yeah, and guys, think about this. We're on tip 5, and look at all the things, all the moving parts that, I mean, yes, visceral, but also what you have to keep focus on. It's a lot. It's a lot for a housing unit. It's not a simple laid up gig. A lot of people may like housing units because they feel it's laid up. No, there's a role that you have to play. That's a very proactive and intentional role. The ingress and egress areas, it's not even just what gets you into the unit, but also if you're working in dorms where there's wings and all this other stuff. I mean, do all the inmates that live on that wing, or let's just do it this way, I'm sorry, the inmates that don't live on that wing, why are they on that wing? You got to keep track of not just the entrance or exits to the units, but also to the individual wings, the individual cells. If it happens to be a cell doors open, gotta, for me, I've always kept, once an inmate leaves, I shut the cell door. I don't leave stuff open. But having said that, sometimes people get complacent. They believe that the inmate's going to come right out and go right back in. And guys, you got to be wary of people that are walking around those units freely, going down the wings or going to go talk to their partner in another cell. Be wary of all that's happening around you, because that's where, like Russ said, that's where the movements happen. That's where the shakings happen. I think for me, in my opinion, maybe Russ would agree, most of the the stuff that could lead to criminal or leads to breaking the rules, whatever it is, either originates in the housing unit where people have time to discuss it and plan it, or it could be carried out in the housing units. I mean, yes, don't grant it. Yeah, you have yard, you have stuff where things are more centralized, but I think the housing unit is a big area for where a lot of things could originate. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Well, yeah, and not just originate is, there has to be a point if they're actually planning something really super nefarious, where they have to at some point breach security. And maybe that's just the first level of what they need to do. We want to stop them always at the lowest level possible. But, we talk about these things and we talk necessarily, obviously, a lot about contraband. But what about escapes? We see all kinds of, bad things happen out there all the time. And we always get blamed for the escapes. And the reason that we get blamed is because we're at fault. So, be in their business, make sure that you're at those points, where things can happen and that you're there to interdict and stop them at the lowest level possible. Because whether it's a housing unit or they need to get a false pass to medical, talk their way into doing something, in the end, whatever they're doing at that level is going to be all bad.
Yeah, and it's sad to say this. I know there are some states that still have staff in middle of these centralized movements like yard or, centralized, I guess you want to call events, whatever they are, like yard or chapel, whatnot. And it's funny because they'll be on point in that yard, or they'll be on point maybe at a gym or at a chapel, wherever the inmates could centralize. But then when they get to the housing unit, they feel that they could take a breather there. It's like, okay, it's like, guys, that to me is where there's heightened activity there as well. It never stops. So, whatever that same level of vigilance that you have for movements like yard or chapel, wherever the inmates centralized, mess would be another area, you need to carry that same vigilance into the housing unit. Because I think a lot of inmates realize that, it's going to be heightened here in these centralized areas. But when I get back to the housing unit, Russ Hamilton's running the unit. He's got his feet back. So I'm able to do a lot of my stuff in the housing unit. So the housing unit isn't a breather for those that are running it. It's just, it requires just as much vigilance as a yard, as a mess, as any area where inmates could centralize. It's, that's the key. So keep that same vigilance going, whether it's a yard or whether it's a housing unit, whether it's a mess hall, whether it's a housing unit. I mean, the vigilance is required of you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Would you, hey, Russ, I mean, that thought just came to my head, but would you agree with that, Russ, that some people may see the housing unit to some level as a breathing point and not as severe as a yard or an active mess hall?
Yeah, it's easy to develop, at least maybe a lower level of complacency while that's going on, because what tends to happen is in places that we tend to mix in places that we tend to have, higher levels of concentrations of inmates. Those are the places that, often, kick off, so to speak. There is an element within the housing units, of course, where these guys, they're already in there, they're already probably getting along to some degree. Everyone knows their place. And so there is a chance, a less likely chance, perhaps, that you're going to see something. And that's naturally when we start to relax and we start to, come off of being on point. Because we see it day in and, where am I most likely to respond? Well, out there on the yard or out there in the chow hall or wherever it is. Less likely, maybe in a housing unit, but that's just kind of the nature of the game. Just don't take it, just don't take it, as gospel that just because, we're back in the housing unit that nothing is going to happen, because that leads into a whole new set of habits that you develop. And when you develop a bad set of habits, then you are in the full throes of complacency. So don't get there.
Yeah, and I think that's a great tip, by the way. I don't think that's something we've ever discussed before, but I think both, obviously, all those areas, including the house unit, requires intentionality, intentional interactions, being proactive, knowing your inmates, what they're capable of. I love this tip: know your resources and have a contingency plan. I mean, when you're first stepping on a housing unit, there's so much unknown factors. Who are these inmates? Where can they be? What's expected of them? What are the rules related to this housing unit? I mean, the list goes on, but having said that, I mean, that's a lot to have to know the first minute you enter. Where are the controlled items? Whatever it is. I mean, what do I document? What do I not document? So knowing where your resources are and having those trusted resources. I mean, for me, I would look to my peers first before I look to a supervisor. That's what I would do as a rookie is I would go to my peers first, whether it's my partner or whether it's someone that I connected to prior. I mean, I have, when I walked in, if I had a senior officer, I'd be like, hey, listen, hey, Russ, do me a favor. This is my first time working a housing. I'm probably going to call you today. What landline you're going to be at? Or do you mind if I hit you up on the radio? And then maybe even Russ may say, call me anytime, or Russ may come out of his way and, check on me a few times in the unit, because there's a couple of things there. One, they see that the inmates will see that me and Russ are connected. So I'm never really doing the unit alone. I like that. Even though Russ may not be there, they know me and Russ are connected. So I'm borrowing on Russ's experience and influence for the beginning of my career. Yes, because he has it, and I'm going to borrow from that and be as effective. And eventually I develop my own. But having said that, the other good thing is it builds a good relationship between me and Russ, me as the new boot, Russ as the senior officer. That's a great relationship to have at the very beginning. Mentor, mentee, whatever you want to call it, but it lets me know as a rookie that I'm welcomed into this profession. So Russ's want to help me, Russ's want to be proactive and teach me and take time and answer the why and share his experiences lets me know that I'm not alone. Fuck the sink or swim. So having said that, know your resources, your support staff first, your supervisors. Russ, what's your thoughts on this, Russ?
Yeah, where we start talking about, hey, it's your first day and you're coming into the unit. You're going to want to know a lot of different things about your resources and about, where your entrances and exits are, ways that you can get away and all that. But one of the most essential things I think that you're probably going to want to find out is, where is that equipment? Where is the equipment that, we deal with the things that really go bad? Where is your Stokes litter, for instance? Where is your Narcan at? Where's your AED defibrillator at? Where are your 40 millimeters and grenades at? Where are your extra chemical agents at? Like in one of the last housing units I was in, we had a big section with an office in there and a locker, and we had our extra vests, all kitted out with, different stuff on it, grenades and impact munitions and, a couple of, 40 millimeter, launchers and things like that. Well, you know what? If you're the senior officer there, and that guy's brand new in there, hey, come over here. This is where we get, our necessary stuff. And if something happens out there today, I want you to grab this, that, and the other thing, or you might be telling them, no, you don't put any of this stuff on. We're going to handle this, but you might need to back us up in some other way. Whatever it is, find out about that stuff. Find out, what you're supposed to do in any particular situation. And then, try and get some input from the other officers there. And hopefully they're going to help you out. And they're going to give you what the real information is about using that stuff. Because we used to have a lot of it. And so it was always necessary to point it out to the new guy there. Hey, this is where we go to get the stuff if we're handling a major incident, because chances are we're going to be.
Yeah. And guys, I want to add something more on the tactical side too. Know your areas of retreat, especially if you're working a dorm. If something is going to happen, where can you safely retreat in case backup is needed? I remember doing some rounds, and I think sometimes there are some officers that don't understand why they don't have the keys to exit out of a unit, why they're kind of locked into the unit. as well, because some of them will be like, well, if there's an emergency happens, I can't escape. I mean, the problem is with that is that you don't want to have those keys on you anyway, because one, you become a target. Two is you could bring the whole concern into another area, but there always should be a spot that you could retreat into. I mean, I remember going through an audit and stuff like that, and one of the concerns were the officers had the keys in the dorms that controlled the ingress and the egress. And a lot of people thought that those keys should not be on those officers because, one, it makes them a target. Two, it becomes compulsive. If something's happening, they're going to want to run to that door, open it up, and now it brings the problem into a whole nother area. It could breach. So having said that, knowing if there's a spot that you could safely retreat into, whether it's your office or something like that, that's protected until you're able to get that help that you need. But hopefully there's also oversight. You have those angels in the sky watching your back. So if there is a concern, you don't have to worry so much about making the call because someone's already making the call for you. But still, if you can make the call, but just to let you know, I think that's having that point. That's more on the tactical side, but wanted to kind of dive into Russ's area of expertise just for a second on that. All right, next one. Make sure you enforce routine operations that relate to safety and security. So, by the way, one is enforcing it with the population, like with ITs, with your IDs, making sure that the inmates are wearing their IDs, you know who they are, that they're visible at all times, especially when they're in the public areas. But later on, we'll discuss it during count. But you want those IDs on them because I don't know who those inmates are. And I may be walking around with my inmate checklist half the time just to kind of figure out if these people are supposed to be in the unit, because it is like a substitute teacher. You know, if you're not the regular, you may have inmates that may try to squeeze into that unit walking around, and it's like, okay, well, I'm spot checking people. So I may not be able to get to everyone at the moment in this public area, but I'm going to randomly go in and spot check people to make sure they're the ones that are supposed to be in this unit. Because again, it could be tough when you work at a lower level facility where there's units that could be connected. How do I know that this inmate lives here? I need to see their ID, and their ID should always be visible. So again, make sure the housing unit is clean. You're doing your searches, you're doing your tours. But Russ, what's just want to make sure, Russ, we're covering everything. What's your thoughts on enforcing routine operations, IDs, searches, stuff like that?
Yeah, it's sometimes we're put in a position where we can't enforce every single thing because it would just bog you down to the point that you'd never get out of the starting gate. On the other hand, there are sometimes some small things that we really do have to pay attention to. Inmates, once again, we get back to these areas where they're coming through into different areas to be checked through. We need to make sure that they have their ID on them. We also need to make sure that that ID is indeed them. Don't just pass something off. It kind of looks like him. Is that what we're going to do? Maybe if that photo doesn't look quite right, maybe we need to send him back, have another photo taken. Maybe what we actually need to do is we need to make sure that he is this person at all. I've intercepted numerous guys that, had the wrong ID, were trying to get into the wrong area. And, it's time to, call the escort officer, put the guy in cuffs and have him put in some area until we can decide who this guy actually is. And then we have to go find the other inmate that belongs to this ID. And then maybe after that, because this could have been an escape attempt, maybe we need to go ahead and do an actual, escape count. Because we don't work on what the possibilities are. We don't work on what the probabilities are. Probability says it's probably not an escape. Possibility says it could be, and so we have to go the extra mile a lot of times. So make sure that that you are doing those things that can impact the actual safety and security. Are there times where you may have to ignore other things? Certainly. We just can't get stranded in the minutia all the time. But those things that really can impact it, especially, like I say, through those entrance egress areas, their IDs, whether they look like their ID or not, those are things that you should be, checking for each and every day.
Yeah. And when it comes to, by the way, a housing unit, remember, you'll have backup in those other areas that lead to the housing unit. So the pass-through ways, whatever it is. So basically, if you have individuals that are heading to your unit that shouldn't be there, you catch them on the spot, and then you notify the areas where they're walking through and say, hey, what's going on? This inmate, John Smith, doesn't live here. Because here's the other thing about that. I mean, you don't want complacency in those tied to areas, but the problem is if John Smith made it to your area, what's to not think that there's other inmates made it to other areas that, they shouldn't be in. So all because one inmate made it to your area doesn't mean that's the only inmate that made it to any other area they're not supposed to be in. So granted, once you see it and it happens, again, just for what's probable, I would actually call and say, yo, John Smith made it to my unit. He doesn't belong in this unit. And having said that, I think there's also a greater concern. Could we have some complacency down there where they're not checking the IDs? Because if John Smith made it to my unit, what's to say that Joe Johnson didn't make it to another unit he's not supposed to be in? I just think it's something that you have to catch initially, but don't just think that it's the one. I know this may sound crazy, but in corrections, if there's a crack, it could destroy the foundation because it could grow. So having said that, John Smith made it to my unit. I'm going to note that concern, call who I got to call. But I think as a supervisor, you may want to go down and talk to your people and one, check to make sure that everybody has the inmates they're supposed to have. And two, to kind of, remind people how important it is to be that checkpoint. What's expected of you. Because to be honest with you, there's no reason why John Smith should make it to a unit he's not supposed to be in. And if he does, then as a supervisor, I'm going back. I'm going to talk to my staff. How did this happen? I think that's a very serious concern that shouldn't be like this. Oh, it's not the end of the world. It has the potential to be the end of the world because John Smith has a chance to get to somebody he's not supposed to get to for whatever reason. So granted, I think that should be treated as serious as possible. So I just wanted to get that out there. I think, does that make sense to you, Russ? That to me is a crack that you want to kind of get on immediately.
Yeah, there's a whole host of things that can go bad in corrections. And that's why, one little indicator, it may be relatively innocuous. He was going to go get a soup from somebody, and that could be the actual reason. But, there's 1,000 other reasons that it could be bad. I mean, it could be he's going to do a hit. It could be that he's going to sit in somebody's cell while they're escaping. And it's going to take that much more time to figure out who actually escaped. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the potential bad things that could happen just from one body, switching places on a yard. So, don't ever underestimate, what it is that you've got. You may think that, the guy is just out of place, but it may be something far more nefarious. And that's where, critical thinking and discretionary decision making, have their role.
Yeah, and guys, when it comes to cleaning a house, obviously outside of the when it comes to cleaning a house, obviously outside of the hygiene and whatnot, a clean house, also has some level of organization to it. So, maintaining a clean housing unit does not just look good, but also maintain some level of control in the housing unit. If I'm a supervisor and I see that there's a unit that's in disarray, first thing I question is the level of control that this officer has over the unit. So again, these are little subtle things that matter, but it showcases the level of control. If the housing unit looks a mess, I mean, I'm going to go after the officer, but the reason why I'm really going after them is yeah, the housing unit looks a mess, but I'm going after them because, like, hey, are you using your level of authority here to get stuff done? Because it looks like they're walking all over you. I mean, I know a supervisor that would literally tell me when you walk into a unit, you can tell if the officer has control or not. And that's through how the inmates are interacting with each other, the freedom that they have, and also how the unit looks on the surface. If it looks in disarray, you got to get on that officer because obviously they don't have control. And then you can look at another unit and it's perfect. It's like, oh, this looks good. I'm not saying nothing's happening underneath the surface, but the point is there is some level of control being established. And obviously searches and tours. I mean, I just want to add one thing that Russ said too. when it comes to deciding what's a priority, everything should be done with safety and security in mind. So granted, if there's a chance that something that can't be done because of manpower or whatnot that relates to the safety and security of the facility, like searches, or you can't do a tour, document it. Document it. Everything that related to safety and security should be done, but there are sometimes you just don't have the staffing. Sad to say, sometimes routine searches aren't being done, or sometimes an officer can't do a tour of an area because they're so spread thin. Each time when you're not able to do something that can directly relate to the safety and security of the facility, you must document it. Because either way, there could be a big liability on the back end of that. But the more that you document it, if something does happen, then you can go and show why specifically these things were not done that day, because I was understaffed, or we had a code and I couldn't do the tour when this inmate killed themselves. Whatever it is, make sure when it comes to anything related to safety and security that you can't do in the moment, that you document why it can't be done. If you didn't do your three searches, don't lie and say you did. Just say you didn't do it, and these are the reasons why. Some people will just say, well, I did it, whatever. No, you didn't do it. You didn't even do it effectively. The point is, document it and then just say why you haven't done it. I'm understaffed. I can't do it. I'm sorry. But if you look at me throughout the day, I'm running a housing unit. It's hard for me without backup to now devote all my energy to these cells and then worry about running the unit at the same time. Both of those things require 100% energy, 100% energy. So at that point, you may have to choose, and also safety reasons. Imagine doing searches on a dorm where, you're by yourself and you're going into open areas where inmates are all around. How am I doing that search 100% effectively when I'm trying to make sure that these inmates don't come at me if I find something? So again, if there's a chance where you got to do something that can't be done related to safety and security, document it and document the reason why. So later on, if something's said, you have it. Okay, so hold on. This to me is one of the most important things, and it gets overlooked. Proper inventory of controlled items, removal, and add-ons. There's so many times where I'm running a unit, or I was running a unit. So I haven't ran a unit in years now, but when I ran a unit and there was something I'm looking for, like a mop, and it broke and no one told me, and it's not in the logbook, and I'm spending all day looking for this mop handle or whatever it is, and no one put in the book that it was broke and it wasn't replaced. I mean, guys, keeping proper inventory of those controlled items matter, because at the end of the day, if something gets broken and it's not noted in the logbook, or it's just not passed out through shifts, someone that's going to do their inventory the next shift is going to be looking for that all day. And the first thing the supervisor say, well, check the logbook. Oh, it's not in the logbook. Okay, so it was there the shift before. And here's another thing. Sorry. You have some people that don't even do those inventories, and they check off on it without doing it. And now the problem is we don't know exactly when this item went missing, because you said you saw it yesterday. Well, that's funny, because you said you saw it yesterday, but the officer said it broke a week ago, and they just didn't put it in the logbook. So how the hell were you signing for this mop handle for the last week? Russ, what's your thoughts on that, Russ? Broken keys could be another one. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, and when we're doing all of these inventories and stuff, there's nothing worse than shutting down an entire unit, or sometimes even the entire prison, because you're missing an ice cream scoop. People in the outside world may not relate to that, but you know what? That particular scoop, or the slotted spoon, or the ladle that we were serving something with, that missing is a big problem, because that what we tend to see out there is we tend to see a lot of makeshift weapons, and a lot of those makeshift weapons are for the future, something that hasn't quite come to fruition yet. But sometimes when you're suddenly missing a significant item that they can use to make something that's really a significant weapon, that can be an indicator that someone's getting serious about killing somebody. or making a real escape attempt, or taking a hostage. Not something that's, hey, flash of the moment, I need some, BS little, nail in a toothbrush kind of thing. This can be something that's adding up to something much bigger taking place, whatever that is. So you have to be doing these inventories, and you have to be, make sure that you are accounting for everything that's there, and that you're, more than that, accounting for everything that's not there. We need to know where something went. Oh, it was broken. We took it off the line. It was placed into hot property to be removed and disposed of at a later date, whatever it is. But just go through that, and you should be doing that. You should be doing, your formal count on those items when you come on, and a formal count when you leave, and many, many informal checks on what's going on and where those items are during the rest of the shift. Don't leave it to happen where we can't tell exactly, when it left and when it turned up missing. Because if we can tell when it turned up missing, and we can freeze all movement and stand a good shot at finding it, so much the better. But I've been involved in, too many situations where, hey, we're shutting down the whole unit, 1,200 inmates on this unit. And it's because we don't know something about a ladle that disappeared 2 days ago. It's horrible. And the chances of us finding it at that point are really slim. And so, don't take any of this stuff for granted, man. Do that inventory, and make sure that you're aware of what's going on with all of those items at all times, if you possibly can.
Yeah, and it may go above just the unit, because the thing is, if there's a flaw here, I'm not just, as administration or as supervisor, I'm not just going to stop at that unit. I'm going to say, you know what? I want every area checked. I'm sorry, at this point, I want every area checked, and I want people to be held accountable. I know it sounds crazy, but think about this, is what I just said. Basically, you have an item that's been missing and not accounted for. I'm sorry, at that point here, that could be a culture concern. That could be something that's complacent. And I need to address that immediately, because, again, if that mop handle winds up showing up as a weapon later on, there's so much liability connected to that. So hopefully I'm explaining it right. But if I have an item that was, let's say, missing, and it should have been removed a week prior, but it wasn't. No one put it in the logbook, and then maybe one day you do get this new officer or a senior officer that's on point, and they notice it missing. The key is, well, when was it missing? And then if you're able to find out that this item was missing a week ago, and then throughout the book it notes that it's been in, that's a problem. That's a problem. And the same thing with the add-on too. Like, as I mentioned, if you have another item that's been added on, and for a while you're counting 7, but there should be 8, and then you find out that there was a new item that was added on, and you didn't put in, well, when was that item added on? A week ago. Well, this whole time, they never accounted for this item this whole week. So I'm sorry. I think that's a big concern that needs to be looked at a higher level. And I agree with you, Russ, but also I would go above the unit as well, because that could be just a complacent concern too, where it's not just related to that one unit. Same thing as we talked about an inmate making it to the unit. Yeah, it could specifically apply to that one unit, or we could have a complacent culture here where that's not the unit that's not the only unit that's effective. You just have a rookie cop that's on point that caught inmate John Smith in the unit. But what about if you have, or just any cop on point, but what about if you have officers in the unit that's not as on point, and such inmate makes over there, but they're just not reporting it, or it's just accepted. That's the worst part. It's just accepted. Oh, well, Russ Hamilton comes here every day to give up his soup. Every day, Russ Hamilton's dropping off soup to an inmate or picking up soup. I'm talking about inmate Russ Hamilton. Sorry about that, Russ. But either way, you're always looking for the higher level concern, because I know sometimes we look to address things specifically, and I get it needs to be done, but also look to see if this could relate to something higher level. Is this more related to the culture as opposed to that specific unit or that specific individual? All right, 2 more. Properly record and document needed information in a timely manner and be prepared to pass it off to your reliefs. That's more with the consistency, correct, Russ?
Yeah, but this is one of those things where we can develop complacency through lack of an operational process. If your relief comes in and they say, "Hey, what went on today?" and every day you're just, "Oh no, it was nothing much going on," and we failed to really document or impress upon them some things that were found out of place, like inmate Russ Hamilton made it all the way down to to G unit or whatever. Then what we've done is we've foisted a sense of false security on what's going on in that unit. We need to be passing on good, relevant, specific information, but also just that gut level at times, because we never know what someone else may pick up on and stop something serious. If you tell your relief, or you document to your relief, maybe you're sending them an email. Sometimes in this day and age, we don't always do a changeover shift briefing. But what should be going on is we should be informing them of some of the things that did happen, no matter how minute. But also those gut level things. Hey, you know what? The Crips seemed a little bit off, and no one else seemed concerned about it. In the other STGs and stuff. So I think that, there may be a power issue there. Maybe they'll have more insight as to that, because they're going to see something in the shift and go, "Hey, we noted that too." And then, maybe they're able to capitalize or leverage that. They go and do a search and find a weapon, and maybe a removal was going to be done, but pass on things to them so that they have an idea of what you saw, and then they can dovetail and see if it jives with what they're seeing out there. And they get an idea of, hey, where are you having problems? Hey, yeah, we've had a couple of slip ups on, people getting past some areas. We need to, tighten that up. It's important for us to be talking back and forth. One of the things is they just, constantly want to blame each and every other shift except for their own. Instead, what we want to do is we want to be able to make this, part of a team effort. It's not just the team on shift; it's the team overlap between shifts that really can sometimes, make or break the incident or the day.
Yeah, and obviously inmates take advantage of inconsistency, whether it's inconsistency because there's lack of information, or inconsistency in the translation of the information. For me, I always find that consistency between partners, consistency between shifts is paramount for success, because if not, the inmates will obviously manipulative inmates will push towards the inconsistency that relates to what works in their favor. So again, the more consistent we are with the information that needs to be passed down from shift to shift or between each other, and the more consistent we are within that translation of it all, like the why behind what we're doing and what needs to be done, really does matter. And even if it's got to be documented and passed across, I mean, whatever it is, it's got to relay a consistent information that puts everybody on the same page, so we're all moving in unison. I mean, that's the key. I mean, right here, when you don't properly record or document stuff, the message is not consistent, and the inmates obviously will act on that divide. And also on the other thing, this can be used in the courts. Everything we document can be used at the highest of levels. So it's very important for us to document things that need to be documented. If it's our efforts or a lack of effort for whatever reason, we need to document those things, because you never know when it's going to get called on. It could be called on years from now, and you're not going to remember the reasons why. I mean, this is something that you do every day that really doesn't stand out in the moment. Winds up standing out later on when an inmate pushes a lawsuit, and it's like, I don't remember who that inmate is. And that lawsuit's from 10 years ago. How do I remember? But thank God I documented stuff, and thank God I kept a good little journal for myself. So again, consistency, law side. I mean, this is a very good tip here. And timely. I used to hate as a supervisor going into a unit and seeing, I mean, how we operate, would see nothing in the logbook put in, and the officer's like, well, I do that all at the end of the shift. No, you're not going to remember it all. Even if you're journaling it, I know, but you got to put that in when it matters. Because at any point that logbook could be taken for whatever reason. When you have a chance, I mean, yes, carry a little notebook with you, write it down, but the moment you have a chance, put it in the logbook. Put it directly in the logbook the moment you have a chance. You may not have it during the incident, but find time or ask the supervisor, hey, can you relieve me? We had a big incident. I got to write it in the logbook real quick. I mean, yes, have the notebook with you to write it down immediately while it's happening, but, get that into the logbook as soon as you can. All right, last one. Obviously, make your count count. Russ, what does that mean? How important is count?
Man, if you want to talk about something that, we get hemmed up on across the country year after year after year, it's a bad count, that unknowing bad count at the time that leads to an inmate, climbing over a wall or getting out of a little area and then, being on the run for 10, 12, 14, 48 hours later before someone, catches it. It's because we're doing bad counts. We're supposed to be in there. We're supposed to make sure 100% that we have an exact count of an inmate, that we're not counting dummies, that we're counting a real body in there. And yet somehow, year after year after year, you'll find 20 or 30 different incidents across the country where somebody screwed up the count. And it wasn't just screwed up, the first time through, it was screwed up sometimes, in some instances I've seen as long as a week before they got it right, and this guy ends up getting arrested for something in some other district, and it's not even known that he's missing yet. Well, let me tell you, that's what leads to a very shortened career. All right. There's one thing that we always have to do, and that's protect the public. In fact, as far as our mission, that is job one. There is nothing else besides protecting the public. And all of these things, can add up to really, really bad headlines. But you know what? More than really, really bad headlines, this can end up to, people losing their lives, the public, no longer trusting us. It can end up with us being prosecuted. Maybe you're out there and you faked that count just because you were too lazy or too involved with something else, and you phonied up the document, and then you ended up like those people being charged in the Jeffrey Epstein thing. All of those things are bad. And like I said, the worst thing though is when the public loses trust, or the public is endangered, or their actual safety has been impacted by us not making sure that our count counts. So whatever else we do, we know that during the shift that we're on and the count that we're doing, it has to be done correctly. So don't just, blow that off and think, what's more important than count? Getting dinner started on time. That's just a false premise. There's nothing at all except that count at that moment in time. So make sure that you take it seriously, and, don't cut those corners. Do not do it. Do not become part of that headline. No one here wants to end up, on NBC nightly news because they screwed up a count.
Yeah. And guys, there's also something with documentation too. If the inmate's not in your unit and they maxed out or whatever it is, make sure you put note of that, and then you drop your pop down by one, or if you get a new inmate, you add your pop by one, because when those relieving officers come in, they look at the pop and what's in their unit, and they could say, well, I have 119, and then their count is wrong. It's like, no, you have 120. Well, how do I have 120? Well, you got one earlier today on first shift. Yeah, but it wasn't put in the book. Or I lost one, and now I have 118, and I should have 119. So, I mean, again, that relates to the documentation. And also, again, a count could be wrong for many reasons. I mean, one, you could have the total number. You could have the total number off. Number two, you could have the wrong inmate out, or their wrong identifying number. You could have them in the wrong location, or her in the wrong location. I mean, there could be many reasons why a count is wrong. But one thing I will say is that if you do your count correctly, if it's a real physical formal count and you're going bed by bed and checking those IDs, it's less likely you're going to get it wrong. And then you're able to stand by it more so. I hated it when people never took the actual count. They get it wrong because they got complacent in their nature. And then they're shitting a brick when they call it in and it's wrong. Because I've also seen people that have done the count properly, have checked everyone, checked the ID, and yeah, it came out wrong, but they're not as nervous. They're more curious. Well, that's weird. I've seen the different reactions. Like I've done it bed by bed, ID, bed, checklist, every one of those formal counts, and then someone goes, call it in, Gangi, that's not right. And I become curious. Wow, that's weird. Because I went through every one. I'm pretty confident. And most of the time, it could be a technical issue. But then the people that don't do it, their reaction when it's wrong is a lot different. They start shitting themselves. Oh, crap. What? Yeah, well, do your count. Do your count. I mean, we understand that sometimes shit happens. I mean, we're giving a count, and maybe the person that gave the out count gave it wrong. Maybe the person in food service put the person there when they're actually in your unit. I mean, there could be many reasons why the count could be wrong. But do the face-to-faces. When it's a formal count, do the face-to-face. Make sure you see the inmate. Make sure you ID them. Make sure they're in the bed they're supposed to be. Make sure everything is correct. But it does truly begin when you enter that unit and you ask that officer that you're relieving, what is my population today? What's the total number of inmates I'm responsible for today? And then that's what starts everything. So, again, consistency with information. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing, sir?
Just know that there's an art to running a housing unit and running it well. And don't think that, just because things are smooth doesn't mean that it's running well. You have to be in the midst of that. There's a lot of things that you need to learn about it. And don't just assume that the inmates are going to run things for you. You have to be the one to be involved. You have to be the one that's calling the shots. You have to be the one that's staying on top of things. Don't leave it to someone else, because it's all about you out there, and you're going to have a much more fulfilling career if you teach yourself the necessary skill sets to do something like that, because it's going to translate over to other parts of this profession that you're going to need it even more.
Yeah, and guys, this is a great dialogue. I think it also could apply for seniors as well. But the key is when it comes to running a housing unit, hopefully we expressed overall that it's not a sit back, relaxing time. It's a very proactive unit that, done correctly, could lead to a very exhausted day because there's a lot going on at one moment. But having said that, I think it's great tips. Take it. It's advice that we didn't have going in. And as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. Make sure you subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.